Yep. So I think that all these spending issues, there's the continuing resolution government shutdown, there's the debt ceiling, there's the reconciliation choice of one bill or two. I continue to see more logic in one bill because then there's an end of year forcing mechanism, and then you only have to round up the votes once. But the Senate's determined to do two bills, and you can feel palpably, you can feel the pressure towards the Senate because the House, A, because the House can't get its act together, and B, because there are real problems with waiting to do one bill, including funding things like the border, and particularly because it's unlikely they'll get Democratic
Well, the
votes. So,
time is the problem, Mark, right? I mean, I think we all can acknowledge that Johnson can't, even yesterday when we got asked about this was like, well, we're working hard and we're trying to get this and then we'll put
right.
out a
Well,
blue.
let's listen to that. Let's play Speaker Johnson from yesterday's exclusive interview.
I have tremendous respect for Speaker Johnson. I hope the House will move forward soon, but we cannot allow this moment to pass, and we cannot let President Trump's America First agenda stall. One of the things he cites is Borders are Tom Homan and the operations that are going on. He says you're going to run out of money for what's going on at the border, so he's not going to wait for the House. He's moving ahead.
Yes, Lindsey's a good friend. I have great respect for him as well, and I understand what they're engaging in. They want to move the agenda, and so do we. The President Trump got a mandate to deliver that America First agenda. He's working at breakneck pace, as you just saw in the opening of the show, to do that with the executive branch, and we're going to do it with legislation. But to do all that in one big bill takes a little bit of time. So we're working through that process very productively. We've been building on this for a year, Shannon. All through last year, we had our committees of jurisdiction working on the ideas to put it together. Last month, we did that in earnest in January. And as recently as this past week, we spent 4.5 hours at the White House on Thursday and 3 hours later that evening working through the final details, and we're very, very close. So I appreciate the Senate's zeal. We have it in the House as well. But as I reminded my friend Lindsey, I have about 170 additional personalities to deal with, and he's only got 53 on the Republican side there. We have, a very diverse caucus with lots of interests, but we are going to get this job done.
So, Sean, there's so many dimensions to this, and obviously it's going to play out over a long period of time. But here's what I don't get. You're starting to see some Republicans say, well, don't cut Medicare, don't cut Medicaid, don't cut USAID at part. We know that you can't make serious dent in the deficit or the debt except through economic growth, but through cuts. But here's what I don't get. They're basically saying, of course we want to cut. Of course we're the party of fiscal discipline. Of course there are going to be massive cuts, 1 trillion, 2 trillion. But they're not preparing people for what that means. This seems like a disaster for them, even if the Democrats remain completely incompetent. It just seems like a disaster. So where's the preparing of the ground to say, yes, there's going to have to be some sacrifice?
Exactly. I mean, the answer is you're right. It's not there. And the worst part is that that's the one area where President Trump, I mean, this was what he said during his entire first term, and everything since has been this entitlement program, Social Security, Medicaid, are where the real dollars are. And if you don't reform that, now I have always argued that Republicans have got to stop calling things cuts when they're reforms. If you can actually put efficiencies in the program or extend deadlines and things like that bring down the overall cost, that's not a cut. And we've got to stop being afraid of our own shadow, right? And saying, hey guys, here's the deal. This program's is insolvent in 5 years or 6 years or 7 years. So if we don't fix it, then no one gets anything and we're bankrupt. So here are some basic things that we can do. And to your point, you've got to go out there and start laying the groundwork, but they are so scared of this. And you're right. That's part of the problem. They can't come up with the real money to get those the savings, because the problem is you've got your Chip Roys on one hand that are saying, I'm not voting for any of this unless it's offset or we reduce the deficit significantly. And then if you go to reduce the deficit significantly, you've got these guys, the Republicans in seats that are held in California, New York, California, elsewhere, that will say, we can't go home and sell this. So the thing that I find fascinating, by the way, is that if I were in Trump orbit right now, first of all, I think you got to get him on board, which is going to be a tough sell. The second thing is there better be an outside group with all this money that they can bring in now to give them some air cover to say that we're saving programs and this is the right way to go, because that's what it's going to take. And part of the reason that Lindsey and the senators want to go first is because it's less money. The tax bill is the big problem. And once you add that into that big, beautiful bill, it really becomes big. Like big. And they know that. And that's why the House wants to take one bite at this. But the Senate guys want to put the wins up on energy, defense, and the border. And that way it buys them some time, but then they also get credit, because here's the deal. If one big, beautiful bill fails, you get nothing. So these guys in the Senate are like, hey, we'd rather put 3 points on the board right now
No
and
question.
bank it.
That's one of the benefits. Dan, just 1 second. I want to ask Sean to follow. I can't be smarter than everyone in the Republican Party. How could they not be laying the groundwork for this? They're just setting up for disaster. And this is not like something a year away. It's happening now.
Because
Their
the problem, Mark,
constituents
is
are
that,
complaining
as I
now.
said, this is why, there was that comment about the House, the retreat that we covered down in Doral. They don't actually, the way it works is these guys have these listening sessions. And then the morning that it gets laid out, they walk into a conference and go, you heard Johnson yesterday. What they're really talking about is that top number, the 302A and the 302B in budget parlance. And they want to be able to come out and just hand it to those guys and say, okay, guys, we heard everything through the listening sessions. Today, we're moving it to the floor. Here's the top line number. Let's all go. They can't, because when they have those discussions, people will freak out. And so they're going to hide the ball. They're going to roll it out one day and hope everyone doesn't have time to read it. I mean, God's honest truth, because the real answer is it takes way too long to explain what's going on. And a lot of these guys don't have the fortitude to go home and sell it.
Dan.
Oh, somewhere the Obama and Hillary Clinton teams are just smiling, because this sounds like the Obamacare argument, right? We can't let it fail. It's going to be big. It's too hard to explain all the details, but trust us, you're really going to benefit. Look, let's just start with the fact that one of the things that made Donald Trump special in 2016 is that he said we are not going to touch Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. And it was a sign that he was a little different, that he understood the tripwires with this new cohort of the electorate that he was trying to court. And he did it again most recently. So, I mean, why aren't they laying the foundation? Because he said just the opposite. The people who have talked about this mostly is the Freedom Caucus. If you look at where most of this money goes to, I looked it up this morning, biggest recipients of Medicare and Medicaid, number 1 and 2 are New York and California, Pennsylvania, Florida, Ohio. I mean, you're talking about states that this is not like blue America is going to be harmed and red America is going to be fine. So I think one problem is the reason it hasn't happened is it is very hard. And what are you offsetting these cuts for? Tax cuts, right? That is a tough political sell, because you're going to start explaining where the money's going to. If they go with one bill, you are looking at easily over 1,000 pages. It will likely be over $5 trillion in total spending. And a lot of Republicans are going to get very queasy about having to go home. They won't have read the whole bill. They won't know everything that's in there. There will be losers, and it's all fun and games until you take someone's service away.